Hey guys, Spence here, and this is
Shantae, Half-Genie Hero.
So, Shantae. Yep, we're back here again. This game, Shantae Half-Genie Hero, was released by Wayforward, as always, and was a Kickstarter project started back in September 4th of 2013. You know, the Kickstarter year? Yeah, that one. Obviously, this is another game of the Shantae series, featuring the titular character Shantae, who is a half-genie, and who has mastery of jumping and head-whipping, and the ability to transform into different animals. Of the 3 games she had before this one, the first 2 she could transform into animals, but in the third one she couldn't, and I got a video covering the third one if you want a longer opinion on it. Short version, it was okay, wasn't particularly bad, but it wasn't great either. But it's a new game and a new opportunity. So, what exactly is going on in Shantae Half-Genie Hero? The narrative of Half-Genie Hero really isn't all that harrowing. At the beginning of the game, Shantae is told in a dream that she'll have to face an agent of darkness soon, but after that is just her going about her day-to-day life, doing one of 2 things: helping her uncle put together an old machine by finding odds and ends for him, or helping out her friends, the residents, or passerbyers of Scuttletown. As she is the resident guardian genie of the town, I didn't know that also entailed her being the errand girl. Don't get me wrong, she does fight evil and does involve her fighting through stages that have multiple parts in it, but a lot of the time it feels like the plot of the evil scheme just sort of flops down in front of Shantae and she's like, well, I guess I'm dealing with this now. If you remember the quirky style of the minute-to-minute humor of the previous game, between 2013 and now, it got kicked out. That doesn't mean the writing isn't clever, it's still reasonably clever, it's just a lot of the humor and stuff tends to be very vanilla. Even character interactions are like this most of the time, and those are the highlights of the previous game narrative-wise. Maybe I've gotten too used to Shantae's world, but the plot is pretty darn tame for the most part. Whether you're pursuing justice or the many items you'll need for the many errands you'll be running, Half-Genie Hero is a pure side-scrolling platformer just like its predecessors. Also, just like her predecessors, Shantae's controls are virtually unchanged, being able to run, crawl, jump, and use a signature hair-whipping attack, along with the ability to transform through dance, though at the start of the game she doesn't have any transformations. In Half-Genie Hero, you'll be bouncing between Scuttletown, which is your main hub, and the actual levels themselves, which are divided into 3 acts. Every time you first visit a level, you have to complete all 3 of the acts and beat the boss at the end, and then you'll gain a new dance and a new transformation. After which you'll return to Scuttletown and have to start running errands so that you can move the plot forward. When running errands for the residents of Scuttletown, they usually involve you revisiting older levels with new abilities that you gained, so you can gain access to areas that were previously unreachable. These abilities include things such as the monkey transformation, which allows you to scale walls and jump extra high, or the crab or mermaid transformations, which allow you to maneuver underwater, which Shantae would normally be unable to do. Also, while you're in Scuttletown, you can buy items from the item shop. These things include flat upgrades such as reducing the damage you take, increasing the damage you do with your hair, or various spells that require magic, such as fireballs or lightning clouds, that are surprisingly useful when you don't want to get too close to enemies. And that's really about it gameplay-wise, without just talking about certain stages and all the aspects of them and things like that. Because Shantae is really just a pure side-scrolling platform with a pretty simple formula. Run errands for the residents or passerbyers of Scuttletown, usually involving you going to previous levels, gain new powers, gain new items from running the errands, and then the plot will just sort of flop down in front of Shantae, then you'll have to do a new level, run through it in its entirety, beat the boss at the end, gain a new power, and then go back to running errands and cycle, rinse, repeat. While that may sound like a knock against the game, this really isn't, as Shantae's levels are very well designed. First off, the levels are pretty darn varied, and not just visually, which they are, but I digress. Some are primarily horizontal, some are primarily vertical, some will have you dealing with enemies jumping out of nowhere, some will have you jumping on hooks trying to get to the top of the level, others will have set piece moments, all while having different enemies, and heck, even when you revisit levels, they'll have new enemies to keep the area fresh and you on your toes, making those side quests and errands reasonably fun while you're looking for all the nooks and crannies in a level, with boss fights that may not be the most difficult, but definitely a good amount of fun. The closest thing I can say that's a nitpick about the game is the fact that questing and going on errands for the residents and passerbyers of Scuttletown are really binary and normal in their design. I'll admit that's sort of pulling, but also while we're on the subject, Half-Genie Hero really doesn't want you to get lost. There's an NPC in the spa that you can use to heal yourself that will always tell you what to do in case you're lost. Meanwhile, half the NPCs in town are dropping hints that have all the tact and subtlety of tank invasions. It's not as much of a complaint, but it's hard not to point out with how blatant it is. The gameplay as a whole is really refined and a lot of fun. If you like side-scrolling platformers, this game is definitely aimed at you and in all the right ways. When it comes to the PC options, there's really not a whole lot, but the game really isn't all that taxing unless your computer happens to be new 10 years ago. When it comes to the game's presentation, I think Wayforward just wins here, as this is one of the most visually impressive games that I had the liberty of playing this year, outside of like maybe Fury. The cartoon animation style really suits Shantae, and the 3D models for the world are done very well. How and when they mix the two styles together is really how the game really shines. Along with how all the environments and enemies are colorful and varied, the game is very engaging visually. When it comes to the sound department, the sound effects really don't stand out and there really isn't any voice acting. Shantae still isn't fully voiced, though she still has her sound clips. When it comes to the game's soundtrack, it's another Jake Kaufman romp, but oh boy, I think it's some of his best work. All of his soundtracks are good, but it always feels like there are certain standout tracks that are really, really good. But in this one, it feels like those standout tracks are a lot more commonplace than you'd think. The music is very funky, very upbeat, you notice it in the context of the game, and when I listen to it outside the context of the game, I feel like moving my body. And I assure you, that's not a common occurrence, you gotta believe me. So even if you don't feel like getting the game, I recommend listening to the Bandcamp and listening to some of the stage tracks. Though, the character themes actually are not memorable. Heck, I think they're just the same ones as the previous games. That aside, the presentation is a gigantic success. So that's Shantae Half-Genie Hero. Would I recommend this game? As the last Spence session of this year, I proclaim yes! This is a very refined game. As far as Kickstarter games are concerned, this is another success, and as far as side-scrolling platformers are concerned, this is also a success. Because the focus shifted from exploration to more straightforward platforming, the stages are a lot more varied up, as the game has to be if it wants to be successful as opposed to the previous game. Also adding great visuals, a great soundtrack, and a story that's reasonable, and occasionally humorous. With those fun levels I keep talking about, then you got a recipe for a pretty darn good game that's definitely worth $20. In conclusion, a really good side-scrolling platformer game, and if you like the previous Shantae games, then you're gonna love this one. And if you like side-scrolling platformers, I recommend giving this a look at the minimum, because it is very good. It might be simple, but it's good.
All clear.
Hello again, thanks for watching, and thanks for watching until the end. If you happen to like this sort of content, drop a like, subscribe to stay up to date with the videos, and tell a friend who also be interested in this sort of content. In the meantime, there are annotations on the screen to show off my previous videos, but those aren't important right now. If you happen to be subbed already and liked my videos and spread them around by showing them to your friends or on your Twitter feed or whatever, thank you. Thank you for watching, thank you for liking, thank you for subbing, thank you for commenting, thank you for spreading the videos around, heck, even thanks for disliking. Wait, hold on. 30 seconds isn't long enough nowadays. Anyway, like I was trying to say, thank you for all of your support. I mean, at the beginning of last year, I didn't think we have as many subs as we do. I didn't think I get as many views as I usually do nowadays, which, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's really undescribable. I'm new at this YouTube thing, so I wouldn't know much about this. Alright, now that aside, I hope you had a good holiday, and I hope you have a safe new year, and so that hopefully next time in 2017 we can get back to work. Because the first video there is going to be a video I've been meaning to do for a long, long time. Whew, that was heavy. So, thank you again, be safe, and see you next year.